Oh, you need to allow me to share again.
1 second. 1 second. Yeah, you can do it now. You can start.
So how do we go about with this exercise? I mean, yeah, they may not do it, I think right now. We don't, yeah, we'll directly go. Okay, let's see where I was. Okay, let's start from here. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I think I'll directly give the program here if participants wants to take it down and do some, if they want to write out to make a figures. Maybe I'll leave it for some time, 1 or 2 minutes, and then I'll continue. I think if they want to look at this. I think, yeah. So I think these are the 2 Python modules. I think you need to import for plotting matplotlib pyplot as for this is the plotting, and numpy yeah is for the numpy, it's for numerical arrays. So yeah, I have like chosen here different flow rates, that is Q, let's say from that is in meter cube per second from 5 to 300. And this is the water storage from 2000 cubic meter to the 12,000 cubic meter, and different colors for the different flow rates and volume. And yeah, I write a function here for the DOC function. I think maybe this is what, sorry. Okay, yeah, so this is the function that I think I wrote there for this function. Yeah, I think this is the one. So yeah, actually, so flow rate, this is like Q in and Q out are, I think that's same. So that's why, so you don't see Q in by Q out here. So it's okay. So this is the assumption that we made. Yeah, Q in is equal to Q out. That's what we made. So yeah, so this leads to, and then you have like DOC input. You are adding this much input of the carbon initially. And then you have the initial concentration in the water already like C0, it's 0. So assume. And the assumption again is that DOC out is same as DOC concentration at time t. So that is, yeah. So this is another assumption. So we made, and then the function is this, reduce it to this. So yeah, I think this is the time range. You just choose time, how much you want plotting. So this is where, so basically this function is a function of time and Q in and volume. So V and Q in, and DOC in is constant. DOC in is here. And yeah, this is the so for creating the figure, which I showed in the previous slide, I guess. So you need, like, because of the 6 terms I choose, so you have 6 panels to make 6 panels. Oh, sorry. Back. Yeah, for 6 panels. So these are just for the adjustment of the panel left and right, horizontal space, vertical space between the figures, and font size of the text, like title, the x-axis, y-axis font size, I fix it here. And then font, if you want to choose. And then, yeah, so loop through for Z in range length of volume. So loop through the volume and then loop through the Q flow rate. So this is what you have. Yeah, so it is like 3 by 2. So 3 rows, 2 columns. So yeah, and 6 figures. So from length of V, you loop through that and you get yeah, that's all. I think if you are familiar with the Python, I hope this will help you and you should be able to get the figure out. So yeah, maybe I'll continue with the presentation, I guess. No need to spend much time on this, I guess. Okay. Yeah, this is kind of a little more details of how this is really solved in the present version of the model, like Mozart or the CLM. You have a like surface runoff. That means hill slope. If there is a hill slope, then the water just flows. So that's what then the surface in the water just flows. So that is the water going to the hill slope. And then, so from hill slope, it goes to the subnetwork. So I think I hope if you remember the catchment, I showed the figure, hypothetical network, like you have hill slope and then subnetwork. So the water from surface runoff to hill slope and then goes out. So you solve the mass balance equation for this. Okay, like here. So by applying the Euler's iteration method. So this is a numerical method you can apply and solve the mass balance equation for this. And then for subnetwork, similarly, you solve the again mass balance equation. But for subnetwork, you have the like water even from the surface runoff and also subsurface runoff. There may be draining water from the subsurface, which is also going into the subnetwork tributaries, subnetwork, or you can call it as tributaries. So there are 2 inputs here. So that's what you can do that. Again, mass balance equation for that. And then again, similarly, mass balance equation for the main channel or the rivers. It's main channel means our river, you can say. It's a, so from subconductor to tributaries. So you solve the, again, mass balance equation for this represented here. But sometimes, so when you have like, when in the river, you have like upstream grid cells and downstream grid cells. So the main thing is main channel routing receives water from the tributaries within the spatial unit or water routed from the upstream spatial unit. So it can receive from the tributaries and upstream if there are upstream grid cells. So you can also receive the water from there. So this is a kind of a lateral flow. And then from the rivers, it reaches to the ocean. So this is the basic idea of implementation of the equation, this equation, mass balance equation in the models. Okay, so I think that's all about like mostly like I tried to show simple equations for the prediction of the climate variables. And this one, it is for example, carbon I showed, and previously for temperature, I showed some 2 or 3 equations for temperature. So, and now like I think some of you maybe heard my previous lectures in other colleges I had given. So that is, so the next slides, what I'm going to show is like global climate models, which I have presented also. Maybe some of you may be familiar with. I'm sorry about this repetition, but I think I feel this is important to tell this, how the global climate models again work. So, and how these models are used to study the real world application. So let's go about complex mathematical models for predicting the global climate. So this is where now you have global climate models. this here. Yeah. So now you represent almost everything, most of the, not all, but at least most of the possible processes that we represent. So it's a global climate model. So it's a complex mathematical representation of the major climate system components. That is atmosphere, land surface, ocean, and sea ice, and their interactions between all these. So write a complex equation for representing this everything, like almost we are trying to replicate the earth through equations. And yeah, I think many of you may be familiar with the Navier-Stokes equations, and people who studied fluid mechanics, of course, these equations, fluid flow equations. So if you want to really represent the whole atmospheric processes, then you need to have this complete like three-dimensional equation to represent this, and to predict, if you want to really predict more accurately the temperature and the pattern. Even I showed, I think here. So back, I wanted to come back to this figure. Sorry, the temperature. Yeah, this one. So if you want to really, like, understand the sea, so there are a lot of differences in the earth, right? So you have in the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere, because there are this complexity on the earth system, you have mountains, even the latitudinal differences. You need to represent is diverse, and the location, everything, like, so to represent as much as possible. So, and to simulate the temperature, like this drastically varying temperatures from minus degrees to plus, you see, minus almost 10 degrees to plus 26, and then vertically also. And so the temperatures. So if you want to really represent this diversification, that means you need more complex models to represent each and every process on the earth. Like, yeah. So, okay, let's go to the slides. Where I was there. Okay, so yeah, these are the equations. I hope many of you are familiar with these equations. I'm going to go into details. Yeah, these are just to show that these global climate models contains, these are like the core equations of like this, the primitive core equations. So on top of this, what I showed like before, like the surface energy or even DOC, mass balance of carbon equations, they're all linked. Okay, so they're all within the, like, they're trying to represent there is one portion or one, they are linked to one variable among this equation. So something like that. So they're all connected. Yeah, so to again, maybe this is, so I remind again that these slides may be a repetition for many of you. So I hope some of you don't know also. So I just want to again recap this, how the climate models have been developed from like 1970s. So as I showed earlier, like from zero-dimensional equations, and I think in mid 1970s, you had already enough atmosphere to represent the atmospheric dynamics. So, so the models which represent only atmosphere, and like fluid mechanics equations, fluid dynamics, and then in mid 1980s, you started already incorporating the land surface, the interaction with the atmosphere, like forest interaction with the atmosphere. And then in early 90s, so they started also representing the like mathematical equations to simulate the processes in the oceans and their interaction with land atmosphere. And then in the late 1990s, we have already like aerosols, like sulfur cycle model, like sulfate aerosols are introduced. And like this gone in early 2000s, you have more carbon cycle, like carbon in the soils, like mostly biogeochemistry, photosynthesis. These are all, yeah. So it's a carbon cycle. It's all included in the models. And then, so yeah, nowadays and recently, so you have this dynamic vegetation. That means you can simulate the vegetation growing trees or plants according to the climate. So in previous models here, so you just assume that there is some fraction of tree present. You give an input that this much area of trees is present or this much in a grid cell. But here, this dynamic vegetation means depending on the climate conditions. So trees grow like in the nature. How if you have there is a habitable climate, then the trees grow. So in the models also, so you can represent. So yeah, I think in nowadays many of the climate models have this dynamic vegetation capability. And then atmospheric chemistry, reactions in the atmosphere, chemical reactions. So this is all represented now. Yeah, this is again so another way of showing the evolution. So it was mostly in 1890s. So it was radiative transform models, like energy balance models I showed in the previous slides. Simple models to nonlinear models and hydrological cycle for precipitation and evaporation. And you have sea ice and land surface, atmospheric chemistry, again aerosols and vegetation. Yeah, there are like different. So you can see that how these models evolved from energy balance models to the atmosphere and general circulation models to the earth system models. I hope you remember the schematic I showed. Earth system models means now they try to almost represent most of the thing realistically, even urban, like grazing, animals. So everything is includes. So that is Earth system models. Nowadays, these models are called Earth system models. Yeah, and so this is a map to show who does the climate modeling around the world. So there are many centers. So US, they have their own models which are developed, and over Europe, and also now in Norway. This is the okay. So we have Norwegian system model. So that is called NORESM. So I think these models are available online. If you can go and search, I think you should be able to explore these models, what they are. You have a lot of information available on the internet. You can find out. And there's another model which I have been using even when I was in India. This is like from USA, somewhere in the Boulder, I think somewhere here. So CSM called, that is Community Earth System Model of NCOR from USA. And then this is IPSL that I was in France actually. So this is here. So this is Institut Pierre-Simon Laplace Climate Model. So these are all basically similar models, but of course, because of their scientific background, different laboratories and expertise, they have their own models, their own equations. Yes, so basically, but representing the Earth system. So, and even in India, there is one IITM, I think, Earth system model they have started now working on and running the model. So again, some more details on how these models are. Like, for example, in IPSL model, so you discretize the atmosphere layers. Okay, so like this, and so the atmosphere model is called like LMDZ. So these are all like standalone models. You can also run only atmosphere model, and then you can have like ORCID is the land surface model, a glacier model, and you have ocean general circulation model, and then sea ice model. So these are all they interact among themselves, and also they can be run just alone, standalone. So yeah, in the atmosphere model, you have these processes like radiation, boundary layer, convection, I mean, different schemes, like maybe in fluid mechanics, you may have studied different schemes for convection, different numerical schemes. Even for radiation, there are people who develop, so different schemes are used. And like for clouds, different statistical scheme. So yeah, these are all the represented, I think, in this model. So and this is another schematic to show that so community land model, or now recently the name renamed this community land model CLM as a community terrestrial system model. This is developed at NCAR, National Center for Atmospheric Research in USA. This model, I mean, so why? Because I'm showing these model names because I have been using them. So that's why I'm more familiar with these models. That's why I'm trying to tell these names. Oh, you can look at, there are many on the internet, many models available. So yeah, if I go into details in the land surface model itself, you have this like for surface energy balance, you have trees, and how there is the stomatal, how the stomatal absorption, photosynthesis, I mean, yeah, so radiation, this is the surface energy fluxes, what is radiation coming in and going out, reflected solar, direct solar, you have observed solar. I mean, all these processes are represented mathematically now. And then hydrology, like you have precipitation, evaporation, and transpiration from plants. So infiltration, okay, even subsurface runoff, like water table, saturated zones. You have even bedrock, impermeable bedrocks. And then, yeah, surface runoff, everything. These, I think there are more details are represented than shown here, actually. And then this is the biochemical cycles. That means in the vegetation part, you have like, yeah, photosynthesis, respiration, and the BVOCs means biological volatile organic compounds. Those are all emitted from the forest. Even fires, how the fires are simulated. Phenology of the leaves. So you have this, depending on the season, you have leaves falls and then they grow back. So litter fall. These are all represented actually now mathematically. So I think, so why I'm saying is these details really help to accurately predict the climate. So you need all these processes. So you need to represent, then only you can, I think, you'll be able to accurately compute the temperature or rainfall or the climate variables, in fact. So even urban buildings are also included now in the models. So this is what you have: wetlands, yeah, wood harvest. I mean, so crops for irrigation and fertilization. These are all represented in these complex climate models. Okay, so this model, actually land surface model, is also used in Norwegian system model actually. So this is developed at NCAR, but this model is used in Norwegian system model. So that's why I have been in my previous presentations also I've been talking about this CTSM because I'm mostly using this model. So this is just one part of this model, heterogeneism. So this is here, but you have like atmosphere model and yeah, sea ice models, ocean models, river routing transport models, river transport models. Yeah, this is again some more details on how even the roots, I mean, how the litter like leaves fall on the ground, how they decompose actually how they decompose and carbon goes into the soils. That is represented like conceptualization, like you assume that you have some litter which decompose faster with different time scales, and some litter which does not decompose quickly. So there are different time scales. So, and even soil pools also. Some soils take up carbon fast, they decompose fast. Some soils does not decompose quickly, so takes several times. So you have different time scales here. So turnover times. So you can see faster. These are slow pools. Yeah, and this, okay, so yeah, and to run these climate models, you need supercomputers. So maybe I don't need to go into details. I'll just put out here. This is one supercomputer in IIS, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. That is named as a Sahasrat, actually. But that became old, I guess. Now I think this is just 6, 7 years old or something like that. But now they have another most powerful supercomputer, which is called Pravega. Pravega. This is launched, and this has different characteristics. That is, it has a total supercomputing capacity of 3.3 petaflops, and which is made in India. And it has the operating system like CPU nodes and NVIDIA Tesla V100 cards on GPU nodes. It has GPU nodes. So this quick details. Yeah, I mean, so purpose of building HPC, if I just put out this paper because this paper says, this, so here this paper says that unfortunately current HPCs, you see that this current high performance computing platforms are designed, built, and optimized for a broad array of computationally intensive application, which results in them being inefficient for our system predictions. You see here, this paper published, it says this is, I think, the latest paper in 2020 or somewhere it published, and this says that even these super high performance computers are inefficient for our system prediction. So that means our system equations, these climate models are really complex and they need huge amount of computational power. So, and they're not designed to really only for our system predictions, but they're designed for general purpose or some other, you see here. So if you want to go to the more details, you can go through this paper. But that's what I wanted to highlight, how complex these climate models and the equations are represented in those models. And the uses of these models are, they enable us to improve the understanding and prediction of the atmosphere, ocean, and climate behavior. And they allow us to determine the distinct influence of different climate features by providing a way of exploring climate sensitivities with experiments that can be performed on the actual Earth. So you can really perform different kind of experiments which cannot be performed on Earth using these models. And yeah, the changes can be made to one feature in a climate model to discern the impact of those changes or have on the climate, and predict the future climate, such as global warming trends, using the current or historical data as a basis. Using that as a basis, you can predict the future climate. So yeah, this is one figure that I took it, I think, from IPCC report. So from these models, you can see that this is the global surface temperature. This is average over the whole Earth. So the green, the dark, this black line is from the is the mean multi-model means. Actually, the shading, if you see here, these are from different climate models across the world. As I showed in the map, there are many climate models. So they run all the climate models and they try to compare how the models simulate and then take the mean of all those climate models. So this is the mean, I think, the black line, dark line, and the shading is different models. So similarly, so you can project into future depending on the emission scenarios, like oh, in future, if you continue to emit or burn the fossil fuels, you are emitting the CO2, then so you have like business as usual scenarios like this. It can go, the temperature, global mean temperature can go up to 4 more than 4 degrees. And whereas if you apply some limitations like these scenarios, which tells us our carbon capture and storage, or afforestation, or bioenergy crops, you use the crops which are more more useful, more eco-friendly croplands, or something like that. So you have different scenarios like with mitigation scenarios. So depending on those scenarios, you can predict the future climate. So how we can go, how far we can go with the global mean temperature. I mean, yeah, so this is always the question, do we believe them? The equation, because we have many assumptions while representing the equations, even while solving numerically those equations, so we have many assumptions made. But still, I think those equations are really able to capture. You see that this is the block line, and light green, light yellow or green. So this color actually, is simulated from the models, or the shading is from the models. So the observed is black line, and this is the mean of all these models, shaded lines. So you can see the compare. Pretty much the models simulate well the temperature. Okay, I will try to show some of the real world application of climate models, of these models, like how we can use them to study like deforestation. For example, if you want to study, let's say, cut the trees in some place and then look at how that in the model. Okay, so in the model world, you can do this. You remove the trees and see how that impacts the climate. So this is just a figure I show here, that before and after when you deforest. So by 1750s itself, humans deforested nearly, 7% for cultivation. In those days itself. And now almost 50% of the ice-free global land area is covered by croplands and pasturelands. So that much of the land has been, global land has been altered. Almost 50, nearly half of the land has been altered, is like anthropogenic activities are going on over there. So, and today nearly 23% of these the emissions come from anthropogenic emissions. So that is from agroforestry and land uses. So AFLU means. And so if you continue to deforest like that, it's almost 50%. And if you continue to deforest completely the globe, if you remove completely the forests and the globe, so 100%, then what do we get like? So if you have like mostly drier climate, when you remove completely forest, drier, and then no rain, so again becomes dry. Will it become desert? The earth, if you continue to just remove without replanting the trees. So this is the question actually. Will that climate, how the global climate goes to different state? So you can look at such questions with the model and simulate and understand how how the climate will be. So this is one example. Or if you grow back the trees or completely forest, you make forest globally, you plant forests, and then you have more wetter conditions, more rainfall, more clouds, more forests again. So this feedback loop can continue. So you can look at this by doing some experiments like this, like completely make whole globe as a forest and then see how the climate is, and or completely remove the forest and look at how the globe is and how the climate will be. So these are the applications from the global climate models. So one of my paper, I have done this, I have published the research paper. So where we try to answer how long will it take for the climate system to reach an equilibrium in such a case. That means if you abandon the deforested area, that means stop the deforested area and allow forest to grow back in the deforested area. So will the climate system go back to its natural state? I try to answer this question in one of the research papers with several of my colleagues in AAC. Actually, maybe you may have heard the name Professor Bala in AAC. So I think he and Lanko, they performed the simulations at the time when I started, and I have done the research. And we look at this. So maybe okay, I will go to next. Yeah. So we did the two experiments. That is, one in experiment is like 1,000 years blue without changing anything. Like in 1850, let's say in 1850. So you have the industrial climate, right? So pre-industrial climate about 1850, you can say that. So the climate is like mostly stable. So there is no CO2 emissions, nothing afterwards. The climate is mostly stable if you don't do any alterations to the land vegetation. But in the red line, so what we did is we do not allow tree plant functional types for 100 years, like over the globe. And then after 100 years, we allow forest to grow back. And so that's what you see here. So there is a drastic change in temperature when you cut the forests, but then when you allow them to regrow back, so you have the temperature which is going back to the control state. But that is taking, several hundred years. If you want to see not much difference here in the 1,000 years. So here it's almost same as blue line, the red line. So that means it really takes several hundred years to reach the normal climate. So similar to the precipitation also. So of course there are some surely less than the temperature, but at least it takes 100 years, about more than 100 years to go back to the normal state. So yeah, this type of questions can be addressed from these mathematical models. Okay, how much time I have? Yeah, maybe I'll skip this. This all again. And this is another study again I published on deforestation effects on the monsoon rainfall, how the rainfall changes if you do deforestation over the globe. And we try to look at how this rain band actually, this is so if this is the earth, it is just a schematic representing how the rain band is located. Actually, this is called ITC, Intertropical Convergence Zone. So if you just observe this is moving. Say in July, it is close to India. So in India, June, July, August, we receive monsoon in India. So mainly because you have this rain band coming closer, Intertropical Convergence Zone. So this brings the monsoon during those months. So yeah, depending on the season, it moves. So in January, in December, you see it is away. So that's why, so you don't have much rain. So when it is closer, you have more rain. So this is a basic phenomenon that I wanted to highlight for my study. So we look at this, how when you do deforestation, will this location will be the same or will it alter? So that's what we try to look at. So when we do deforestation, this is for the global deforestation, and this is we do deforestation only in the northern hemisphere, like Boreal region, about maybe 50 north. From in this region we do deforestation. Whereas in this, it's deforestation all over the wherever forest is there in the globe, you remove everything and replace by grasslands. And in this figure, this is for tropical region. That means only we do deforestation here, in the tropics. And we try to look at how that ITCZ, I mean, so precipitation, basically intertropical convergence zones means it's a rain. That means you look at the precipitation variable. So we see here the changes in the northern hemisphere, it's blue. Blue means it's negative. There is a decrease in rainfall. And red means it is positive, that is increase in rainfall. So if you look at only the boreal deforestation, we did the deforestation in the northern high latitudes here, but there are changes almost everywhere on the globe. And specifically, you see that in the southern over India, there is a decrease in rainfall. Like blue color means it's decrease. Okay, and there are so all over the northern hemisphere there is decrease in rainfall, but whereas in the southern hemisphere there is an increase in rainfall. So we try to look at why this is happening, even though we did deforestation only in the northern hemisphere here. But still you see the changes even over India. You have decrease in rainfall, even though we don't really change anything over India. So, I mean, these are all the things we can understand using these mathematical models, like, okay, so global climate models. Yeah, so note the increase of precipitation. That's what I highlighted it. There is an increase in southern hemisphere here and decrease in the rainfall. Okay, so yeah, we looked at individual monsoon regions like East Asia, North America, North Africa, and South Asia. So you see that there is consistently in June, July, August, that is the monsoon season in those regions. So you have a decrease in rainfall in different deforestation simulations. These colors like red is like global deforestation, green is boreal deforestation, and so the dark blue is temperate and tropical other. Okay, so and these are different deforestation simulations. And whereas in the southern hemisphere, like Australia and South America and South Africa, the monsoon season is in like a DJF. So there there is increase in rainfall. So why this is happening? We try to look at that. I mean, yeah, this is again because I'm from India. We try to look at zooming over India. What is exactly happening in the boreal deforestation? Though we did not do any deforestation of India, but still there is a decrease in rainfall over here. If you see that large blue, more blue, and this stripling, actually it is called the significance. We did the statistical analysis and try to find whether this change is significant. So we see that it is significant. The hatching all over India, it is significant change. So yeah, this is again a temperature change we look at. So even in India, you have changes in temperature, even though you don't do any changes over in the boreal region. So yeah, we try to look at why that is happening, and the location of IPCZ we looked at. So in the boreal region, you see that about 1 degree location is shifted southwards. It shifts. So ITCZ location, due to deforestation, there is a shift in that location. That means it is little going away from the from India during the monsoon season than actual location. So that's why you receive less rainfall. And that's one of the important results that we are able to find from these models. Okay, so this is again, we try to look at why that there is a shift, why the shift has happened in the boreal deforestation. So the green line is for boreal deforestation. You see that this is again general mean. That means southern hemisphere is here, northern hemisphere is here. Since we do deforestation only like above 50 degrees, like in the northern hemisphere, so there is large deficit in energy, top of the energy, like atmosphere energy flux. So there is a deficit when you do deforestation. That means to balance the energy over the earth. I mean, so there is a heat transport toward the southern hemisphere. You see that. Towards there is a deficit in the northern hemisphere. So there is an transport towards the northern hemisphere itself. So heat transport, so which is heat drawing from the southern hemisphere. So you see here, that's why, and while during this process, you have that shift in the ITCZ. That's what we I think found out in this paper. Okay, maybe I'll skip this. Yeah, this is a schematic to tell that when you do deforestation in the northern hemisphere, so there is a cooling. I mean, there is energy deficit that leads to a cooling. So this is again, there is no CO2 emissions. That's why we don't. It's a cooling. So deforestation means it's usually considered as warming or like CO2 emissions, of course. But in this model, we did not consider CO2 emissions. So. But it is, that's why you see energy deficit and cooling, and then that tries to draw heat from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere. In this process, you see the cloud band sitting over here is moving away, this blue to red. So this is the cloud bands which is shifted towards south. So in the southern hemisphere, you have more rainfall. So in the northern hemisphere, you have less rainfall, like for example, India. And so yeah, so this is the result. Okay, I think I showed this again. So yeah. Yeah, the takeaway messages from this is generally the mathematical models or these global climate models, you can say, produce simulations of current and past large-scale climates that agree with observations. Climate models have also produced an accurate hindcast of 20th century climate change. I think I showed the historical temperature change, how these models compare with observations. So they were kind of accurate and including increased warming, partly due to CO2 emissions. This gives us confidence in using these mathematical models to project future climate change. And then the another message is that climate modeling is already computationally intensive, but increased computing power would allow for more comprehensive simulations and better representation of parameterization, better representation of parameterized processes and more accurate climate change projections at regional and local levels. So yeah, if you represent more processes accurately with more complexity, so as much as possible, if you represent, I think you can have more accurate climate change projections. So another message is that these more mathematical models or global models allow us to separate the individual effects of anthropogenic climate change on the global climate change. That is, individual effect. What I mean was, like, you can look at only CO2 effect, like CO2 fertilization, like on plants, how only CO2 fertilization or even nitrogen deposition, you can individually separate out. So you can see that here the green line only for CO2. So this is NPP, means net primary productivity of plants, how forests or plants grow when you have CO2 fertilization. So it increases the NPP. And whereas if there is a climate warming, that means the production decreases. If you have more warming, then means so plants does not grow well. So the NPP decreases. So like this, you can really, if you have a deforestation like land use cover change, you see that the production, because you are cutting the trees and the NPP production is decreasing in the blue line, you see that. So like this, you can really separate out the individual effects and see, what are the main contributors and how we can really control which one we should control. So we can figure it out. So this is the message that I wanted to give the risk takeaway. I think I will stop at this stage, and I'm happy to take if there are any questions. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Devraj.
Yeah, let me know if there are any questions or comments.
Yeah, we are searching in the YouTube. They may respond a little late because that streams, that lag time will be there.
Okay.
Anyhow, as and when we get the questions, we'll just try to interact with you regarding that.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the 2 sessions that you have spared with us, and you have shared your knowledge, deep knowledge on global climate control and modeling of it, analysis of it, and all the concepts that you brought in and shared with us. We are very
Thank
much
you.
thankful
Thank
to
you
you for the wonderful session and you have given, and you have spared your time. Thank you very much, and we hope we'll continue our association the same way.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Devraj. Again, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We'll keep in touch.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.